Okay then, this will be the last time I'm doing this, I hope. Hey yo, I'm just your average bored bookworm who's doing her 5th video on Artemis Fowl, cause you know, why not? I kind of want to talk about magic systems anyway, so I might as well like make a 5th video on Artemis Fowl. The movie sucked. Haha. Yeah. Anyway, I will probably end up repeating some of the info from the fairy video I did. Probably not too much, but just because I have to explain a little bit about the fairies to explain the magic system. Okay. Let's jump right in because I don't have to put any let me explain about the character. Haha, I don't have to do it this time. So, the Artemis Fowl books run on a hard magic system. If you don't know what that is, a very brief explanation is that there are hard rules that you know. It's not like, oh, a wizard did it. You know what are the rules, maybe not from the get-go, but you know them along the way, and everything that's happened just sticks to those rules. A very good hard magic system, to use an example, would be alchemy from wow. I'm rewatching this show and I can't even say the name. Full Metal Alchemist. You know the rules to it pretty much straight away, that to make something has to be given of equal, equal mass, equal everything equivalent exchange. Everything has to be equal in between what's being made through alchemy. Nothing breaks these rules. It's a very good magic system when you're looking for a hard magic system. Now, the hard magic system in Artemis Fowl is explained pretty thoroughly in the first few books. There is some stuff that's added on in later books, but it's more like they expanded rather than like breaking the rules. Any expansion does not really break any of the pre-made rules, so I will not be going over the expansions much since they don't pertain to the first movie. I'll just be going over what are the base rules. Now, with fairies, there are known to be 8 families of fairies. There's technically 9, but that doesn't come into play until the 5th book, and I'm not going there. And they are the elves, dwarves, centaurs, pixies, sprites, gnomes, goblins, and trolls. And while they all have access to magic, depending on which one they are no more limited. Elves seem to be one of the most well-rounded in terms of magics. You hear a lot about the Elven Warlocks. While when you meet Morch, the dwarf, he talks about how he doesn't have a big affinity to magic, and neither do most dwarves. Like, he can do little like healing stuff, and he can do something like everything he does is very minuscule, which is why he was okay with just like giving up his magic. But he fully mentions that centaurs have almost like no access to their magic. They just like they're not very magical in terms of spells and stuff. I think the most he can do is probably do some healing on himself. And it's like that with all of them. They all have different amounts that they are like good at. All fairies, despite how much affinity they have towards magic, live by what is known as the book. The book is just the fairy Bible. That's what it is. It explains the magic to them. It explains the laws they have to follow to keep the magic. The one we hear about the most is involving being invited into homes. Fairies cannot enter a home unless invited by the person who lives there. So when Honey is kidnapped, they can't just storm the house because they don't have an invite into the house. Well, Honey does have an invite because a kidnapping does count as an invite. There's a few things that count as an invite, like if somebody inside the house is like yelling for help, that can be counted as an invite. Sometimes some vague stuff like Artemis says, as long as I'm alive, nobody is allowed inside, which implies that once he's dead, people are allowed inside. So that is like that is how the fairy world works. Like, it's very interesting that they add this part in because fairies are known to be very much like they're very keen on phrasing, which is why like there's this whole old thing about how you should not give your name when a fairy asks for it. You instead like offer them a name they can call you instead of giving them their own, because then they have power over you. the magic system of Artemis Fowl takes roots in a lot of like old fairy mythos. Now, should they break the rules in the book, they will lose their magic. It depends on like it depends to the degree they do things and how often they do it. Say they enter a home without being invited, all the magic in their system will leave them and they will suffer a magic sickness. If they perform the ritual, which I'll explain in a bit, they can recuperate their magic. But should they continuously enter a home without being invited, then they lose the magic forever. There's some other stuff in there. I think they're like not supposed to mesmer another fairy. You know, there's a number of things, but that one's the one that's mostly talked about throughout the series, and it's the one that's most important in the first book. Like I mentioned before, there's this ritual that allows them to replenish their magic. And again, there's a hard system to this. There is one exception to this thing, but it only gives you a spark of magic, and it's not explained until a later book. And still does not really break the rules. So once a fairy has run low on magic, they go to an ancient oak tree on a bend of a river on a full moon night. They pick an acorn, and they plant it somewhere else. And when they plant it in the ground, the earth pretty much gives them their magic. They're now like fueled up. And that's how it goes. Fairies are very much like in tune with nature, and that seems to be where their magic comes from. And everything about them really reflects them. Magic is very much a part of them. There's one thing that happens in the movie that I really, really hate, because you can't do this. You can't do this. It doesn't fit with the magic system and given no explanation. Is they block Honey's magic when you can't do that. See, magic is an energy inside of you. So them and they never go over the ritual or anything. So like that explanation's not in the movie. So it seems to be just like a battery she carries or something, and it's like, oh, block her magic. That's not how it goes. There in a later book, there's a way to like strip a fairy of the magic temporarily, and like they'd have to redo the ritual to get the magic back. But again, it's not in the first book, and it's not the method used in the movie, so it doesn't matter. I'm only bringing it up because somebody mentioned it in the comments of a previous video. It was actually in my original script, but I was like, I'm not gonna bring it up because it's not in the first book. This is no shade towards you who commented. It's just like, I probably should have like covered my bases. Anyway, now that you understand a little bit about how the magic works, where the magic comes from, these are like rules that are set in stone. Here's like how the magic is used. The first one would be shielding. Now, shielding, despite the sound of its name, you don't like create a shield or anything. It refers more to like shielding from people's eyes. What the fairies do is with their magic, they like vibrate so fast that they're not in one place long enough for the human eye to detect them. So they're pretty much just invisible to the naked eye. Sometimes you can maybe tell when there's a fairy there because you can see like some weird waves in the air. And you can tell if like there's a huge group of fairies, but you have to be looking for this. Other people will just like not notice at all. You have to be consciously looking for this to really tell it's there. And it's brought up in the movie in the worst way possible by being like, don't forget to shield. And they're not showing her shielding. So you have no idea what they're talking about when they say shield. Like they're like, oh, don't forget to shield, as they blast her off into the surface, and then you see her completely like available to the naked eye, flying over human residence. How are we supposed to like? That would have been a great way of like showing, not telling. So they're like, oh, what's shielding? And you show what shielding is. But no, they didn't do that, so you have absolutely no idea what shielding is. And later on, they show some fairies who appear to be shielding. It's like, what was the point of that? You're just like bringing stuff up from the book just to like, yeah. It's awful that they do this because you're like already confusing the audience about the magic system. You haven't explained anything about the magic system so far, and then you do this, and now they're just not gonna understand what they mean by shielding. If I asked anybody who watched the movie, they probably wouldn't know what shielding meant. Like, they could have, like, shown her, like, suddenly turning invisible as she starts flying over and then turning back into visible once she's, like, away from the human residents if they wanted to show this cool flying sequence, but no, they'd rather confuse the audience. Yay. Now, the second thing that's prominently shown is healing. And healing is one of the better done aspects in the movie. Healing in the book is a little weird to explain. The magic will stitch their skin together, will stitch them up and fix them. They cannot like regrow limbs. They can maybe like fix no things. If they get a leg cut off, they can heal that leg and put it back on if it's been like a short enough time. But it will cost, it costs a lot to do that. And healing does cost a lot. Like if you're on the verge of dying, you have like broken ribs and a punctured lung, like that's gonna take a lot of magic to heal you. And it's really just like magic strands stitching together scar tissue. Hani makes a joke in a native book about how Artemis is just gonna become a bunch of stitched up scar tissue by the end of his knife, just because of how many times she's had to heal him. And I guess the movie does a pretty good job at showing the healing to a degree. Like it is explained that you see like new sparks over the body as they're healing, and they kind of do that in the movie, and I'll give them props for that. But again, they confuse the audience because Hani decides to heal a little girl who's been injured by a troll. And when she does this, her superiors are like, do not heal that human. You heal me, do not heal them. Which makes absolutely no sense. Because there's no like repercussions for doing this minor healing. There was no reason not to heal, especially since they were planning to mind wipe everybody there. Why shouldn't you heal? Like it gives the audience the impression that there's more to healing than just what she's doing. I like that they said like do not heal her and then she healed her, so then you like that you understand that the new sparks going across her is healing. But if the point of saying do not heal her was just to mention the word healing before showing something magical, so the audience makes the association of, oh, that is healing, they did that in just the wrong way. It would have been better if they like prompted her to be like, don't heal her yet, heal her after you've taken out the troll or something. Anything to make it seem like there wasn't some kind of repercussion to her healing the child, because there was no repercussion. Nothing bad happened in the end to the child or to Hani. There was no reason for that. It just confuses the audience about how the magic works or what the magic does. And then lastly, of the like three main ones, and then I'll talk about the fourth one, which needs a lot more explanation, is the Mesmer. This one really got me mad. Oh my god. The Mesmer is a way of sort of like hypnotizing people. They seem to like layer on magic onto the voice, and they can do some night mesmering there, but they won't be able to do much until they actually look you in the eye. And you should be careful to look a fairy in the eye, because they can mesmer you, and then you like forget what you just did for the last 2 hours and find out you robbed the bank for them. You can fight against them if you know you're being mesmered, but that's not a good idea. You might lose some brain cells. Literally, like it can burn you out. But it's just like, it's very much an iconic part of the books, because it is where Artemis's iconic sunglasses come from. When he realizes that the mesmer works through the eyes, he makes these reflective sunglasses, so when they are looking each other in the eye, he won't get mesmered, because they're not looking directly into his eyes. It was a really smart thing on his part. It's something super iconic, but then they messed this up in the movie and really just used the sunglasses to look cool. The mesmer allows them to make the person do pretty much almost anything. If it goes against their morals, they might fight back, but if you're smart and savvy with how you phrase things, eventually you convince them into doing it. You can like tell somebody to shoot a gun at someone, even if they are not a killer, by just being like, this isn't a gun, this is a camera. Pull that trigger and it takes a picture. So they can end up killing someone thinking they're taking a picture. It's a very powerful magic, which is why those glasses were so important, because they protected him from falling victim to the mesmer. One of the rules that fairies have to abide by, which I should have mentioned earlier when I was talking about the book, is that once they're in a human residence, they must abide by the rules that that human puts in place. If Artemis says, hey, you will not kill me, she cannot kill him. But if she takes over him with the mesmer, she can just make him let her leave the house. Like he puts a restriction on her, so that in case she does manages to escape her cell, it's like, hey, you're not allowed to leave this house, so she cannot leave. And until she like mesmers him to like lift that restriction, like she's stuck in there, which is why those glasses were so important. But in the movie, they have this one mini bonding moment, and then he takes off his glasses, and she doesn't try to mesmer him. You see her mesmer once to Juliet to like, I guess, point out the glasses thing, but then it's never used again. And I'm pretty sure they only did that so they can have that really like heartwarming, he takes off his glasses to show that he trusts her moment. And it's just like, oh, no, stop it, please stop. Stop trying to make them friends through daddy issues. It doesn't work. It doesn't work like that. I'm sorry. I'm mad. I'm annoyed that they did that to the Mesmer because it's so iconic. Like, a lot of people, part of the plan relies on the Mesmer making somebody else do the dirty work while they reap the rewards. And doing this to such an iconic part of the series, like, please. It leaves, like, a lot of the stuff they do with the magic leaves the audience feeling like, oh, wait, what was that? What did they do? How'd they do that? Huh? And that's how I was like, what did the eye thing have to do? Like, if I didn't know that was a Mesmer, I would have never understood it. Like, they kind of make her voice sound weird with like the layering, which is like, they mentioned that they like layer their voice with the magic in the book, so that was a really cool, they did a really cool way of showing it. Like, it's how I imagined Mesmer being used, and then they use it once and never again, and it's like, oh, please. Like, they didn't explain it. Because at one point later on in the book, she does end up mesmering Juliet when she takes off her sunglasses, and it's just like, that would have been so cool to see the Mesmer in action, get to see like how Juliet just becomes incapacitated because like she's been put into a different reality. She's told that there's like a TV screen in front of her that's just playing endless wrestling, and she's just like, even though she's being like carried off and into danger, she's still like, no, my wrestling, and because she thinks the blank wall has a TV that shows wrestling. That's so cool, and it's kind of scary. Like, oh damn, this magic isn't something to be trifled with. But they don't go anywhere with it. And the last of the four that's like really important in the first book is the time stop. Time stop also falls into spells, which I need to explain very lightly, just because like it happens in the later books, so I should explain it at least a little bit because it is established in the first book. So, but the time stop has to do with a bunch of warlocks creating a circle around an area, and within that area, time has been stopped. They are kind of like dropped out of time, and it's hard to explain how this happened. It's not like the universe, the time has stopped or something. It's like that area has been put into almost like a pocket dimension, and you can spend like 8 hours in that pocket dimension while like 3 days pass by in the outside world, just because you're like completely brought out of reality. But the way the time stop works is that you can also spend 8 hours in there and actually spend only 2 minutes in the real world. It's very, very cool. Forney has been able to use this technology to kind of like advance how time stop works. So instead of having a bunch of warlocks stand in a circle to create the circle, he has them instead pour their magic into batteries, and then he uses the batteries and his technology to like make the circle work, which is really cool. Like a nice little like technology plus magic thing. Like those little things are sprinkled into the book made a really interesting magic system to learn about, because like, oh, you can combine this stuff, neat. And they really screwed that up in the movie. They seem to just fundamentally not understand how the time stop works, because instead it seems to like the first time they use it, it freezes everybody within the time stop in place, so just kind of floating there. And that's not what they mean by stopping time. They mean that they've like taken that spot out of time. And then despite everything being like time stopped, Honey can still move in it, even though everything else is frozen, and so can the other fairies. So I'm like, what do they have like how does that work? Because a troll is also a fairy. So if the logic is in time stop, only fairies can move, why can't the troll move? So does that mean they have something on them that lets them move in the time spot? Nothing is explained. They really butchered this. They butchered this magic system so bad. It leaves the audience so confused, because And it ties back into something I talked about in my fairy video, where the movie doesn't explain what a fairy is, so you're left really confused and thinking that Mulch isn't a fairy, even though he is. And I didn't even think about like if people thought the troll was a fairy, because the troll is a fairy. And the second time the time stop is used is on the Fowl Manor. And what they instead do is that like everything within the bubble is moving, but everything outside, time has stopped. And no, that's not how it works. Because you can't stop the time of the entire universe. The point of the time stop is that it drops a limited space, like out of time. If somebody were to say you start a time stop and you re-enter time 2 days later, within those 2 days that's gone, people can walk into the place where that area was, and they'll just see that it's deserted. They're like, oh, why is nobody inside the house? And then like once the time stop is over, everybody's dropped back into like our reality, our like dimension, and then like things would just suddenly appear back there. Everything, like the house was like, say you time stop a house and somebody walks into the house 2 minutes after it's been time stopped, and the time stop ends 1 hour afterwards. So that the person just like standing in that area, suddenly everything around them will change. Like if the house has been demolished in the time stop, suddenly the house will be demolished around them. And they're like, what the heck? Oh my god, what is happening? It's not that like the world's time has stopped. And and the whole, it makes magic seem like so much more powerful in the movie, yet at the same time, because they don't explore any other aspects of it, you're like, what? And they also never explain how magic has to do with the time stop, because it just shows Foley using this like weird hover disk thing to make a time stop. What? Huh? Where's the magic in this? Once the thing is damaged, like I guess they were trying to do the whole mixing magic and technology thing the book does, but because you don't understand how the magic works, then you don't understand how the time stop works, and the audience just left confused. Like, yeah, it's a cool visual, but like you're choosing a cool visual over audience actually understanding. Those are like the main aspects of the magic in the first book. The movie just does a bad job at showing all of them and just confuses people because you don't get any knowledge in front of you. You don't understand the magic system. And there's nothing wrong with not understanding a magic system, because, you know, lots of people won't understand a soft magic system since it doesn't have set rules. Like a wizard did it. It's the explanation for a soft magic system half the time. And people love that. But they give the illusion of a hard magic system while not delivering, which just confuses people. They change some aspects of the book in the adaptation, which I expected. It always happens with adaptations because, you know, not everything translates 1-to-1. But the inclusion of the Acunos makes me so mad, because there was no reason for this thing to exist but to have a MacGuffin and to have a reason for Artemis to be a good character, even though he's not a good character in the first book, which is super cool. One little thing about the Acunos I did like, by the way, it was in the shape of an acorn. Oh, but wait, they don't explain how important acorns are to the fairies. So what's the point of doing that? Sorry, I had to do a side rant before I actually fully talked about it. Now, the Acunos, as explained in the movie, is that it is a skeleton key for the universe, which can open portals between worlds. Whatever that means. You see it in action once, I guess. I feel like they're trying to play into some of the aspects of the Nader book, which makes no sense since this is the first book, and the Nader books kind of just build up on the foundation of the first book. Because in the Nader book, you do learn about a pocket dimension, where this other family of fairy lives, and then you also learn about time travel. I know some people don't like time travel, so that one's a hard one to talk about. And I'm assuming that's what the Acunos is supposed to represent. It's not Nader traveling between dimensions and through time and stuff like that. But you don't see it ever used. It's kind of used to bring Artemis Fowl Sr. home after he's been kidnapped, but he's very much on Earth and in our dimension. So the portal to another world makes no sense there. Oh god, it was so bad. It hurts to think about. Make it stop. Apparently, like in the description of it, it's supposed to also be the source of fairy magic, which I have explained is not the case. They get their magic from the earth. They are very much in tune with nature. Everything about them has to do with nature, but they've completely rewritten that and been like, ah, yes, the Aquinas is like as important as the sun. And I'm like, what? I'm sorry, what? And to activate the Aquinas, you must say the incantation, carry me always, carry me well. I am thy teacher of herb and spell. I am thy link to arcane. Forget me, and thy magic shall wane. That is the first line in the book. Not the book as in the book that we're reading. No, the book as in the fairy Bible. So they're like, yes, what can we do to like make this cool? We need some cool like magic talking stuff for this magic object. And let's use the first line of the fairy book. And this makes no sense in context of the Aquinas, because it says, carry me always, carry me well. The point of that is not an incantation. It is the first line of the book to be like, hey, you must always carry your book with you. Every fairy carries a copy of the book with them. I am the teacher of herb and spell. The book teaches you your magic. I am thy link to power arcane. Again, teaches them the magic. Forget me and thy magic shall wane. If you do not abide by the rules, forget the rules, do whatever you want, your magic will go away. That is what that incantation, quotation marks, means. And it makes no sense to put that onto the Aquinas besides it sounds cool. The second I heard Hani saying that as she's trying to use the Aquinas, I'm like, I'm sorry, what? What? And despite it being the MacGuffin, it holds very little, I guess, it holds very little use, I guess. It's used once, just to bring back Artemis Fowl Sr. from wherever he's being held captive. It doesn't influence the story besides people want it. And I guess that's the spark that starts the plot, but nothing is done with it. No one uses it besides to bring back one person, and it has nothing to do with the whole like, I can open borders into another world. Like everything they hype it up to be, it does none of that. It's just there to trigger the plot and does nothing else. Creating the Aquinas really breaks the magic system, because one, it gives them a new thing of where the magic come from, since like describing it as like the sun to them, like it's just the most important like fairy artifact. Like by implying that the magic comes from this thing, you remove the nature element of them. The fairies are nature, are tied to nature so much so that in a native book you learn that there was a fairy disease started due to pollution. Like this was a magic based disease that started due to pollution. That's how tied to nature they are. And by making this MacGuffin something so much more important, you take that away, and it's like one of the cool aspects of the system is there and gone in just one edition. And I get like, you know that the people who made this movie had to read the books because they decided to make the Aquinas in the shape of an acorn. It kills me inside that they did this because they removed any aspect of the acorn from the story, though. The acorn is something very important to the fairies because it's the link to magic. Like I said, the ritual involves burying an acorn. Like when it comes to like badges of honor, they do acorns instead of stars. They're like, that is the equivalent in their world is acorns. It's so important to them. But because they kind of like remove all aspects of the acorn by removing the ritual, like there's no reason for the Aquinas to look like that besides aesthetics. For it to fit the aesthetics of the book, which the movie does not follow. And it could be that they remove the ritual from the story because they introduced the Aquinas. But then you're like removing the reason it's an acorn. I hate this. A lot of things I can find the domino effect of how they got to from point A to point B, but the Aquinas is not one of them. It's just there to start the plot because they couldn't start the plot as the book started. The book's plot begins because Artemis Fowl Jr. is trying to find his dad and needs more money. He doesn't actually need more money. He wants more money, but rich people problems. And he decides to look for a fairy to kidnap and have them pay ransom so he has more money so he can continue expeditions to find his dad. That is how the plot starts off. But since Artemis Fowl Sr. is now alive and not missing, and his mom is now completely dead, like they could have at least switched the plot so for him to be looking for his mother instead of his father. But no, they just like completely kill off the mother. What sparks the plot? Oh, and it's kidnapped the dad. Why is he kidnapped? He has this magical fairy artifact called the Akinos. Yeah, that works. That's the point of the Akinos, is not to be this magical artifact, but to be a spark for the plot. And it just ruins the magic system. Maybe being a little over dramatic, the magic system's not completely ruined. Like, oh god, the tragedy of it all. But, you've completely confused your audience by not explaining the rules, then adding this new aspect of it, and you take an aspect from the book and apply it to the MacGuffin. I'm still mad about using the first line of the book, the fairy book, as the incantation. Like, I really hate it. I hate it so much. I want to make videos that are more positive after this one, just because of how much negativity has been in these past 5 videos. But you know what? I hate what this movie did to this book, because this book was very, very interesting. The magic system is not one I see very often, the way it's set up. It's hard to find something that's like completely original, and even this isn't completely original. It's very much based in like a fairy mythos of like Irish tales. And that's one of the cool things about it, is that they take those and almost modernize them or give them like some kind of explanation. And by not fully explaining that, you're doing a disservice to this magic system and all the work that the author put into it. If I had to message some movie only watchers, they probably would have like no idea how the magic system works, how they get their magic, where their magic comes from. They might think it comes from the Akinos, even though it's supposed to come from nature. It makes no sense. I hate it. And I think that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed me just ranting about the Akinos, really. Like, I know the first part of this video is probably a little bit informative, explaining how the magic system works to a certain degree, and then showing how the Akinos ruins that by making it the source of magic, apparently. Ugh. But I hope you enjoyed it. Stay safe, wear a mask, do good choices. I will hopefully have this out by New Year's, so Happy New Year's as well. Bye bye.